News9. I'm Krishna Kumar, and the big story we're beginning the show with is India's GDP growth for the first quarter of this financial year, which is coming at 6.7%. It is indeed at a 15-month low. India's GDP grew at its slowest pace in 15 months at 6.7% for the first quarter of this year. The primary sector, which includes agriculture and mining, took a hit, dipping to 2.7% compared to 4.2% last year. This data covering the April to June quarter comes just after Prime Minister Narendra Modi secured his third term in office in the month of May this year, making it a critical indicator of the economy's current state. Experts had already anticipated moderate growth this quarter, citing factors like the general elections which came in, and of course the summer heat, which also took a hit on many sectors across the board, and of course the slowly reviving rural economy as well. We have Teresa John, Deputy Head of Research, a lead economist at Nirmal Bang, joining us to help us put those GDP numbers into perspective. We also have Mithali Nikore, founder and chief economist of Nikore Associates, also joining us. Mithali, thank you so much for being with us. Let me begin with Teresa John. Teresa, 6.7%, the estimates were anywhere between 6.5%, 6.5% to 7%. So in that sense, it is in line with what the economists' estimates were.
Right. Broadly, it is in line with market consensus, so probably a tad lower than the consensus numbers. It is better than our expectation. So as you said, we are seeing some cyclical moderation in growth over the last few months. It's not that we are in a sharp slowdown, but definitely because of the heat waves, elections, and in general urban demand, we are seeing some fatigue even in indicators like car sales, etc. after the pre-pandemic, post-pandemic boom that we have seen.
Right, Teresa, stay with us. Let me take this across to Mithali. Mithali, I want your initial thoughts on that GDP number. Bear in mind, for the same quarter in the last financial year, the GDP growth rate was at 8.2%. And even for the previous quarter before this, it was at 7.8%. So, all said and done, this number is in line with what was generally expected.
So, Krishna, definitely it is in line with expectations, but the headline number is in line with expectations, but the composition is a little bit concerning, because when we look at two specific sectors that have slowed down, the first one being agriculture, so mining has actually done very well, but it's the agriculture sector where the growth has slowed down to 2%. And, this sector is not as linked to elections as the services sector is. So, it is concerning that the agriculture sector growth slowed down. And one of the major reasons, in my view, is actually climate change, floods, droughts, etc. And, the impact of these weather-related and climate change-related events, which is now being seen in the agriculture growth slowdown. And the second, which I want to just say off the bat, is the services sector slowdown. We're seeing the services sector slowdown come across, the subsectors in trade, as well as in, financial services, and of course, government spending also slowing down. So I think this is also concerning because, at the end of the day, again, financial sector has less to do with, with the elections. So it is definitely concerning for these two sectors.
Right. Teresa, the question we have to ask at this stage is that for the full year, there is supposed to be, the expectations are that the second half of this financial year will be better than the first half. So in that sense, a recovery can be expected from here on.
Yeah, so that is possible. So as you said, the current quarter was impacted by the heat wave, elections. So private capex has actually seen a slowdown, and even government capex has actually seen a slowdown. So we could see some pickup in both government capex and private capex potentially in the second half of this year. So I don't think people will revise down their full year GDP growth estimates, but at least for the RBI's estimate, which is at 7.2%, probably substantially higher than what the consensus is at, there could be some downward risk.
Mithali, according to some estimates, government capital expenditure needs to go up by nearly 40% for India to achieve its full year GDP growth targets. So in that sense, there's a lot of catching up to in that department.
No, absolutely, Krishna. I mean, if you look at, there are two categories, subcategories that I was looking at, in the year-on-year growth breakdowns. And two of those, the heat waves point that Teresa made is so good, because if you look at the, reduction in the number of passengers that are being handled at airports and at railways, those have actually reduced. In 2023, there was a growth of 20% in, the passenger movement. Now that growth is down to 7%. So, at the end of the day, the impact of the heat waves really being felt there. And then even the cement industry, it's almost been flat in Q1 of 24-25. The cement industry growth has come in only at 0.3%. So these two numbers and sectors definitely concerning. And, again, this is where the government really needs to look at the specific sectors which need support. Because it's not only about wide government spending and social protection, but also about supporting the industries that really need that help.
Right, Teresa. There's also talk of the urban consumer confidence, which seems to be dipping and having an impact on the main GDP figure finally.
That's right. So as I was highlighting even earlier, we are seeing some, moderation of that pent-up demand that we saw after the pandemic. This is not India-specific phenomenon. We are seeing that even in the US as well. So some of the pandemic era excess savings have largely been exhausted. So it's not that urban growth is falling off a cliff, but definitely we are seeing slowdown. I think the rural growth will have to pick up, and then the hope is that will happen in the second half of the year, because the monsoons have largely been normal. Actually, we've seen excess rainfall, but there is still some concern on when we look at the spatial distribution of the monsoon. So when we look at northern India, particularly states of Bihar, Punjab, the agricultural belt, even UP. The rainfall has actually seen a significant shortfall in those core rural belt.
Mitali, if I were to ask you, what are your estimates at this stage for the full year GDP growth?
So, Krishna, I'm not revising my estimates for the full year GDP growth. I'm still going to be bullish and say, we have to expect somewhere between a 6.5 to 7%, and in fact, it could even exceed 7%. But this depends a little bit on government spending. And while I'm not going to say, going up to 40%, but I think some of the areas in which the government really needs to start investing is around agricultural, sector, where we need more investment in irrigation. We need more investment in climate resilient infrastructure, in flood management, which was also announced, if you recall, during the budget. And these are, areas where the government is now taking cognizance of, the impact of climate change coming into these sectors. So I'm quite hopeful that, also with the rooftop solar scheme doing so well, I'm quite hopeful that, some of these bumps that we are starting to see already come in the GDP data will also be handled. But, the other area that I really feel that we need more effort again is logistics. PM Gati Shakti and investment in our cities has been prioritized in the budget, and we need to start seeing more and more expenditure and disbursements on that, because that's when we really see the trade sector also pick up.
Right, Teresa, talk to us in terms of sectors that you think will lead the recovery, because industrial output did take a hit, especially in the first quarter of this financial year, simply because of the oppressive summer heat. Apart from other sectors, industry was one of the highest to take the hit. But going forward, there will be a revival in industrial output.
So there should be some revival in industrial output, but I don't think it would be very significant. So as I said, we're seeing some cyclical moderation in growth, which I think could continue even into the upcoming quarter. So I'm not expecting a significant decline in growth from what we've seen in the current quarter, but neither a significant pickup. In the second half, we will see slightly better numbers that we spoke earlier, because government spending, which is not really taken place because of the elections, that will happen. But even if you look at the pipeline of projects from the government, both the central and state government, even in FY24, that pipeline had seen a slowdown in FY24 itself. Now that you don't have a strong pipeline in place, it's very difficult for the government to come and spend very aggressively, even going into the second half of the year. So our base case expectation is that the order book should start building up for, with the agencies like the NHAI again starting to give orders, from the June, July, and in the months going forward. So because of that, we will see some pick up in government spending, but not significantly so. So all the hopes are largely pinned on the private sector capex recovery, but even there, it is led by few sectors like the PLI linked sectors and largely the renewable energy space. So that's where we are seeing some activity, but I think all the kind of drivers are in place for the private capex recovery. But I think even the private capex recovery is going to be a slow and a prolonged recovery, even in that case.
Right, Mithali, Moody's has just upgraded India's GDP forecast for the year to 7.2%. We are standing at a crucial moment when it comes to the economic recovery post-pandemic. It's very important that the moderation in growth this year is not as low as being estimated, and any improvement would be good news.
Absolutely, Krishna. I mean, I think the Moody's estimate is based on actually the estimates that are coming in the manufacturing sector. So even in this particular quarter's data, if we look at the manufacturing numbers, they are very encouraging because they have increased from 5.9 to 8.4%, and manufacturing itself has gone from 5 to 7%. Construction sector also doing very well at 10.5%. So, these numbers indicate, these are actually leading indicators for growth. So even if in this quarter we are not seeing that growth translate into faster growth in consumption, because of this increase in manufacturing and construction, we'll see the consumption increase in the next quarter. That is definitely my my estimate from the private consumption point of view. And also in the next quarter, we expect government spending to also increase. What is very important now at this stage is for investment to be resilient and for investment to keep growing. And if we can keep getting that investment growth into the manufacturing sector, then we'll be well on our way to an annual growth rate of 7%.
Teresa, annual growth rate of 7% is where everybody's estimates and hopes and aspirations are around for GDP for this financial year. Anything around 7% is a good number. But there are a couple of concerns at this stage. Corporate earnings, for one, which were mixed for the quarter gone by. They have to revive. And apart from other issues that plague the economy.
That's it. So I'm on the more conservative side. As you rightly pointed out, the corporate earnings growth remains a key cause of worry. It has only been in single digits in this quarter. It can pick up in the upcoming quarters, but even then, the best of margin expansion has largely behind now. It has to be driven by revenue growth, driven by volume recovery. So probably in the third quarter post-festive season, we'll be able to take a better call whether we're actually seeing that volume recovery. So our estimates are on the conservative side. We have a 6.6% GDP growth for the entire year.
And are you expecting any kind of a rate cut, given the way inflation and GDP are progressing?
See, in the near term, no, but we are expecting a rate cut. Our base case is February 25. Earliest could be in December.
Okay. All right, we will leave it at that. We're completely out of time over here. Teresa John, Deputy Head of Research at Lead Economist at Nirmal Bang, and Mithali Nikore, Founder and Chief Economist at Nikore Associates. Thank you, both of you, for taking time out to be with us here on the show. And with that, we take a short breather here. We'll be back with lots more on the other side. Keep it with News9 Live.
Quite lived up to their pre-tournament billing, delivering a series of less than convincing performances. For 2 draws and a solitary win.
Your son will be Messi. No studies, just football all day. Go, my son, go. Make my face shine through playing football.
Not only your face, but also the country's. I will conquer the world by playing football. Come, let's go to Germany!
World's largest football talent hunt, News9 Indian Tigers and Tigresses. In association with DFB Pokal, Bundesliga, BBB and India Football Center. Train and play matches in Europe. Register now and fly to Germany. IndianTigersandTigresses.com.
Big fan of Ian Bell, watching him very classy in all formats.
I find Durban quite a challenge, which is still an enjoyable one.
You're not allowed to bowl a bouncer, so that tells you that they want to see runs on the board.
बड़े अच्छे टूर्स किए हैं, बड़ी अच्छी यादें हैं हर जगह की, जहाँ मैंने पर्सनली क्रिकेट को बहुत एंजॉय किया, ऑस्ट्रेलिया एंड इंडिया में बहुत ज़्यादा एंजॉय किया.
I love playing again England and India, and they were both very different challenges.
Up close and personal with legendary cricketers like never before. Icons of the pitch.
This and more. Streaming on News9 plus news is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Hey, careful, huh? My daddy got it from abroad. Hey, disaster! How will you pay for the loss now?
In stock market, you should take risk as per your capacity and knowledge. Trade in options very carefully.
Wow, Dikra! Absolutely perfect. Take risk with full understanding.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
Muktiwani Yoda was aide to Sheikh Mujibur, came to my CEO. It told him that the family of Sheikh Mujibur under captivity of the Pakistani forces. The first lady came with Sheikh Mujibur and she embraced me and said, the God, the Allah has sent you to save us. Modi ji and the Hasina. During talk, she brought out this point again that Major Ashok Tara of Indian Army said me, my mother, my sister, my brother, we got independence on 17th December because of Ashok Tara.
This and more. Streaming on News9 plus news is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
You're watching Indian Interest. I'm Krishna Kumar. Time now to put the focus on the next flight that you will be taking. Make sure you double check that flight because there is a big churn that's happening in India's airline sector. These are challenging times for India's aviation industry's major developments on all carriers across the board. The latest is that SpiceJet is once again in crisis mode. It's struggling with severe financial difficulties. The airline has decided to furlough 150 cabin crew members for 3 months, a move that tells you about the level of its financial woes. Furloughing involves temporarily halting paid employment due to financial constraints. It's a major step that reflects this airline's desperate measures to stabilize the situation. Well, that's not all that's happening with SpiceJet. It is also under the scrutiny of the aviation safety regulator, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, or DGCA, that has recently taken action against the carrier amidst reports of passengers being stopped from boarding at the Dubai airport due to SpiceJet's unpaid dues. Now, this is the second disruption of SpiceJet flights from Dubai this month, and it tells you the mounting operational challenges that the airline is facing due to its mounting financial challenges. Meanwhile, it's not just SpiceJet. The Indian aviation sector is witnessing a major shift as Vistara and Air India prepare for a major merger. Starting the 3rd of September, Vistara will cease to accept bookings for travel for on or after the 12th of November. This merger marks a transformative period for both airlines, and passengers should be aware of the upcoming changes. So if you're booking a Vistara flight, beware. According to an official statement from Vistara, customers will progressively lose the ability to book flights with the airline for dates beyond the 11th of November. And as the integration with Air India moves forward, we'll have to wait and watch as to what's going to happen with India's airline sector. Joining us now is Dr. Srinath Sridharan, policy researcher and corporate advisor. Srinath, great to have you with us here on In Your Interest. These are as the famous Chinese proverb goes, may you live in interesting times. These are interesting times for airline passengers in India. So to the point where before they book their next ticket, they'll have to think twice about so many things, watch so much news before they make their next flight booking.
And Krishna, forget making the travel with the flight ticket, but can a website of, let's say, an Air India would even allow you to seamlessly book a ticket and actually select a seat, and will you actually get that seat even before the plane takes off? I think we have seen a lot of those challenges, right? It's been crazy. I think the last, I would think realistically about 2 years, we've been seeing Go Air go under literally. There were bidders, and very interestingly, SpiceJet was also a bidder for Go Air. And I'm surprised that if an airline is under so much stress, how did the insolvency regulator as well as aviation ministry or the regulator allow a kind of a stressed airline to bid for another airline? So I think that's a policy point that I want to moot, saying that are you only looking at air safety or the smooth operations of the airlines, or are you also talking to consumers, the passengers? And Krishna, let's be realistic. The festive season is going to start, and also the big period for, let's say, the Indian hospitality industry, which is the influx of travelers, foreign travelers and domestic travelers, and the festive season starts from mid of October. And that's a big chunk of revenues for all these sectors. Whether it's tourism, hotel industry, restaurants, MICE travel, wedding season. And if the aircrafts are going to be limited, or if the flights are going to be limited, we have a challenge. And if I were to add to other complication, right? Typically with, let's say, the winter season, we also have a lot of airports which are not Cat 3 compliant, or airlines where they've not trained their pilots or staff to be Cat 3 compliant, which means most of the flights also get cancelled. It's, I think, very, very scary. We've already seen a duopoly kind of scenario today. With Vistara-Air India merger, it's going to be the Tata Group having one say in the airline sector. Other is Indigo. Where are the rest? We keep talking about $5 trillion economy, consumption economy, 140 crore Indians, the great Indian middle class. But somewhere, are we going to allow people to move from one city to another? Or are we going to be stuck with it? I think that's a bigger worry, Krishna.
Right. I'm asked this question, at a time when it's given a conversation or debating point as far as India's airline sector is concerned. It's becoming a duopoly. In that sense, what do you think can we do as passengers booking tickets going forward? Because you have had a spate of strikes also happening. You had a strike at Vistara, there was Air India, there were multiple instances of strikes. The crew is not happy, the pilots are not happy, but then again, you have green shoots of hope, like you have a new airline in the form of Vistara-Air, which continues to be in the skies for, although however small it is. So in that sense, how does we as a passenger, we as a consumer, deal with a situation like this?
See, I think that's a real challenge, right? Who do we complain to? Let's say you're at the airport and your flight is delayed. There are lots of fine prints in every ticket booking. They will at best tell you, we can put you on a different flight. And that's a challenge. And I think here is where I think one would expect the regulator or the aviation ministry to come together and call the stakeholders and say, what is it that we can do? If I remember right, there is actually an Air Passengers Association as well. And I think this is the time that they need to be more active to talk about how do you assuage hardship that the passengers go through. The reality is, I think there is no one person or one stakeholder to blame. You have grown rapidly. This is a sector where it needs a lot of capex, and we've always kind of jocularly said, right? If you want to be a millionaire, start off as a billionaire and start an airline business. And we have seen successively a lot of airlines, not only in India, but even globally, go bust. Two, I think we got to be very pragmatic for passengers. Is there actually passenger right of charter? What do passengers expect? Krishna, I think it will be great if at some point in time you actually put out a program saying what are 5 to 10 things that they can expect and who do they call or who do they complain to. It's heart-wrenching, and when you are a passenger stuck at the airport and you have to get somewhere and the flight is cancelled or delayed and there are no answers, we also have a challenge because a lot of times the check-in counters are actually outsourced. They're not the airline staff as well. Somebody else, an outsourced agency, is running those check-in counters. And what next? You don't get food. The Indian airport, a lot of airports kind of choke when I say choke, the infrastructure, be it the toilets, the food gets run out very quickly. How do you help? And I think here is where I think it'll be very interesting to say, can the Indian airport operators, of course, the bulk of the Indian large metro airports are today privately owned, and can they bring in a kind of a charter for passengers saying that if a flight is cancelled, this is what we expect the airlines to actually pay for or actually arrange for the customers. I think that we should do on pure, humanitarian aspect. Food, water, something. Two, I think it's very, very challenging. We have fantastically built large infrastructure, great space, but how about people? And I think India, being at one point in time the BPO capital of the world, has now forgotten what it means. If you try, Krishna, call, let's say, a Vistara or an Indigo call center. It's going to be really frustrating. Sometimes it feels that chatting with the chatbot might be easier than getting a human on the other side.
Right.
And that's a challenge. And I think these are all pain points which I hope the Ministry of Civil Aviation actually calls the stakeholders and solves it. Because we don't want them to come in only when an airline goes under and say, hey, we are here, don't worry. I think operational movement. Today, we have only literally 2 airlines in the country. And that's a challenge.
Just 2 airlines in the country, full carriers, that is going to be a challenge. Srinath, I'm afraid we've completely run out of time here on the show with that. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us here In Your Interest. And with that, it's a wrap here from my side. Thank you so much for watching. This is Krishna Kumar signing off.
Give it to me, pass.
We'll put new glasses in the windows and they keep breaking it. This is the 4th time. You are playing football throughout the day. Will you win the world by playing football?
Yes, uncle. I will now conquer the world by playing football. Let's go to Germany.
World's largest football talent hunt, News9 Indian Tigers and Tigresses. In association with DFB Pokal, Bundesliga, BVB and India Football Center. Train and play matches in Europe. Register now and fly to Germany. IndianTigersandTigresses.com.
This is News9 Live, India's only digital exclusive live stream. For the early adopters, bringing you the news 24/7. For the smart audiences on the smartest TVs. News9 Live. Stream now on your smart TVs.
One of my friends was residing here. Every rainy season, he will take his mom or otherwise even the dog also, pet dog also, he will take the pet dog and go to the resort, which is at Banasura Sagar Dam. This time around, he didn't. So, completely washed out. There is no idea about my friend.
हमारा फैमिली में रिलेटेड फैमिली था और उसके रिलेशन में तकरीबन 20 लोग मरा हुआ। अभी हमको पता नहीं सलाह भी मिलेगा नहीं मिलेगा। अभी 5 दिन हो गया।
Streaming on News9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.